Welcome to the Global Education Station Presents. I'm Annette Levesque, your host, education and technology strategist, and author of eLearning Gold, the ultimate guide for leaders. In each episode, we explore innovative ideas and best practices in education, connecting with directors, CEOs, authors, and thought leaders. Together, we'll share stories and insights to inspire and engage learners globally. Today, I'd like to introduce you to 𝗘𝘅𝗽𝗲𝗰𝘁, is the Director of Education with the Ottawa Catholic School Board in Ottawa, Canada. He's been with the board for 34 years in various roles, including Superintendent of Human Resources, Learning Technologies, and Associate Director of Education. He's the recipient of the 2023 Distinguished Superintendent Leadership Awards and was previously recognized with one of Canada's Outstanding Principal Awards and the Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, Annette. Happy to join you.
How are you today? I am so excited to have this conversation with you because you are a superintendent who's got a little bit of a techie background.
Yeah, I've certainly grew up in the tech side of life, and it's served me well, and it's been great to be in the Ottawa Catholic School Board, where we really promote innovative uses of technology.
And how did you tell us a little bit about your origin story? How did you land in this world of education? What drew you to it?
Yeah, I certainly didn't have a normal path. I had zero interest in becoming a teacher. Both my parents were teachers, so when I was growing up and a teenager, I saw how hard they worked, working every evening, every Saturday and Sunday, and I said, I'm going to do anything but teaching. So my goal at that time of life of a 17 and 18-year-old was to be a professional soccer player. So that was my only vision, that's what I was going to do. And I went to McMaster University in Hamilton. I did play soccer at a high level. And then in my last year playing soccer, I had a career-ending knee injury. So I needed a new backup plan because pro soccer was not going to happen for me. I did complete a phys ed degree, and then I went on and did a master's of sport administration. And I ended up working for Ottawa's pro soccer team. At the time, it was called the Ottawa Intrepid of the Canadian Soccer League, and eventually became their general manager. So in the late 1980s, I was living a bit of a dream, not as a player, but as a GM of a pro soccer team in Ottawa. But unfortunately, at that time of the 1980s, soccer was not that stable. It was not really a long-term career. So I needed a backup plan, and I could see that the league had the potential of folding, which unfortunately it ended up doing a couple of years later. So my backup plan was to become a teacher, and I went to Teachers College and started teaching, and really have not looked back. I've loved every job I've had in the school board.
That's amazing, and it raises actually such a really interesting point when we look at student athletes and amateur athletes pursuing those types of careers in athletics, that it's really great to have a backup program. My son just did a program at in Yukon University, way up north, and it was for aviation. And there were various programs he could have. I mean, you could just go to a flight school and become a pilot, but it was really neat that they had an aviation management program, and that was actually what they stressed. It's a question we hadn't thought of: was what happens if at some point you can't pass the pilot medical to be flying, and if you're in your early ages, what's your backup plan for that? So that's an important note for students, I guess, in those careers.
Yeah, and just as a side note, my background was phys ed and a master's of sport admin, so I assumed I would be a phys ed teacher because I loved coaching, and I was coaching soccer when I started my career, but there wasn't full-time timetables at that time for phys ed. So I ended up taking some business courses, some computer courses, and I found in the early 1990s, I just loved computers. And the reason for that, even though I had no background or training in it, was that the students were so engaged with that technology. There were no behavioral problems when I was teaching multimedia in the early 1990s. We were the first school board in the province to offer multimedia, and it was dial-up. It was a few of the devices had sound cards. But that really got me involved at an early age as a teacher to focus on what are the students' passions, what will keep them engaged. And then all of a sudden, classroom management was no longer an issue. So I switched fairly quickly into the business computer side of teaching.
And what super cool innovations and technologies are you using right now in the Catholic School Board in your role as director that you're really proud of, or that would be great to share?
Yeah, this has been a year of learning in AI for our board. So back in November 2022, when ChatGPT came out, it really was a lot of fear and a lot of people saying, we've got to ban this from the board. And as a board that has a strategic commitment of be innovative, we weren't interested in banning. We were interested in learning and finding out about the potential. So we really have spent this year learning, running all kinds of pilot projects. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done this year to set us up in a position for next year to fully implement AI tools and look at how that can really transform education.
And where do you think, so now that you're on this journey, when we're sharing with other educational leaders who are in the same situation with their school boards, we've got teachers who really love it that are on board. We've got some that are really fearful of it and not ready for it yet. What's a great place if they're just getting started, do you think, for that? Where should they begin?
Well, as an educator, the latest version of ChatGPT 4.0 or Omni, that is a free version, and it really shows the potential because it's multi-input, multi-output. So I can speak to my phone and say, I want you to translate everything I say into Ukrainian. And if you hear Ukrainian, translate everything back into English. So I can have a conversation now with a student who in the past in my school I may not have been able to communicate with. So it's going to show the real potentials. We've had lots of pilots. So some of the key tools that we will likely settle on, we use a Google ecosystem in our board. So although we also use many Microsoft products, majority of our staff are working within the Google areas. So Brisk is a tool that I think we have 1,500 teachers this year using Brisk AI, which is amazing, having that many teachers and educators implement an AI tool because it sits right on top of the work that they were already doing. So that's another area. But I would say just get out there and try things. There's lots of districts around North America that have been doing this for a year and a half. You don't have to reinvent everything. But as a starting point for the leaders that may be listening to you, Annette, you really need those guiding principles to start off. So the guiding principles are so important that you look at if you're going to move into the area of AI, what's going to guide your work? And if I have a second, I can name the 5 guiding principles that we set on for our board. So this was really important. It was after interdepartmental work. We had a team of 35 come together to look at all kinds of different areas. So although it sounds simple on the 5 we settled, we didn't get here until after lots of discussion and input. So our first priority is to prioritize the humane and ethical use of AI tools. So that humane use of tech is so important in the ethical use. Our second is to focus on education and learning. That's why we're doing our work is education. So it has to go back not just on saving time for people, but how do you focus on education and learning? Our third guiding principle is we need to all be champions of equity and justice. And that's how we address things like hallucinations and biases, that we're championing equity and justice. So we're going to raise these points with our students and make sure that we're teaching AI literacy. Being transparent, so our students, our parents, our staff are all aware of when we're using different AI tools, how much of the AI tools we've used. And the last area is safeguarding privacy, security, and data protection. So that's so important with the power of AI to make sure that we're protecting the safety and security of all of our students' personal information. So everything we've done this year has been informed by those 5 guiding principles.
That's amazing that you've developed those and that you are this far in your journey. That's super impressive. And so when we look at ethical use of AI, have you approached yet creating anything for students to help them as well within the board, or determine where are they able to use it, where are they not able to use it, and what constitutes ethical use for students?
Yeah, so going back to that year of learning, we spent the year trying to figure this out. So we made mistakes, and we also had a lot of focus groups. So we interviewed students. We looked at how were they using AI, what were their concerns. We interviewed parents, and all of this has led us to the point that we're at now. So this week, as we get to the last 2 weeks of school in our district, we're about to release our AI toolkit for all of our educators. Now, in that AI toolkit, one of the things we developed was an assessment and evaluation website. And that includes a chatbot called Advisor. So if I'm an educator and I say, I think a student has used AI to submit this document, what should I do? It will pull from all of our documents on assessment and evaluation. It'll tell them the steps, which don't say right away, well, suspend the student, he or she definitely cheated. It's have a conversation, make sure you advise your vice principal, talk to the student, ask them to show evidence of their learning, let them tell you about the sources they used. So that's an important tool that we're releasing. included in that are with the assessment guidelines. We have classroom guidelines, and that helps with the students as well. We were asking students, we have resources for them to cite AI sites and for our staff to cite AI sites. In our toolkit, we have a framework for our staff to assess any AI tools that they may want to use that the board hasn't formally done a privacy impact assessment for. We have our OCSB prompting framework, recommended resources, and then we have an FAQ for our staff. But what the students told us over the year was, yes, there's some students that are using AI to cheat, but those are the same students that were cheating last year that without AI. And that's backed by the research. So Stanford University released a report that showed that there's been no real increase in cheating since the release of AI. It's just a different format. And students were also telling us the majority don't want to cheat. And it's a variety of reasons. It includes they don't want to let their parent down or parents down. They don't want to let themselves down, their teacher down. They want to be ethical. They want to use it for studying, for creating flashcards, for entering their notes and asking questions prior to an assessment. And there was also a report from Turnitin that came out that analyzed 2 million assignments that have been submitted to Turnitin since AI. And it found that 3% of all of those assignments had 80% use of AI. So it's a very small amount that are using it for cheating. And we really want to change that discussion for our educators to, if a student is going to cheat, why? Is it the assignment? Is it a lack of skills for time management? Are they overloaded? Do they not see value in the work they're doing? And the other piece that we've added in our assessment evaluation for next year for all of our syllabus is we're asking staff to include some level of wording that says all assignments and assessments are subject to oral interview. So it doesn't matter if your mark was 90 or your mark was 60. The educator can bring that student in and have a dialogue with them to explain their learning, explain how they got to what they submitted. And for some of our students that are not good at text-based assignments, their marks will go up. So that's just a good assessment practice. So we think this is a real opportunity in education to improve our assessment and evaluation practices. So this is good news coming forward. It's going to be a challenge, but we're really excited about it.
That's really interesting. I really like the idea of the teacher toolkit to help them get started. And with your comments regarding the Stanford University report, we actually used to find the same thing when we launched virtual learning in the age of infancy way back in 2000. That was one of the key questions was, how do you know that these students are completing the work? And when you're looking at students working from a distance, and over the years, as we became better detectives in learning why were students cheating in the first place, and would they do it again, through their educational journey. And it seemed to be the same students, actually, even when they received the penalty, they would often repeat, to my great astonishment, the cheating. And it would happen on multiple fronts. So it wasn't just in one place. Usually it was a case of not getting to the assignment, sometimes them having a teacher sit with them once a week and create a map of when they needed to get their work done and keeping them on track so they wouldn't end up in a situation where they were in an e-learning course and the deadlines were coming and everything was due at the last minute, and then they had all this pressure to perform. And they would often, if you created a little bit of a flag system, students very rarely just hit one flag on the academic dishonesty front. It was usually in multiple places that were happening. And so, as you said, AI is just another tool that we need to look at. And then also looking at strategies for prevention and the types of assessment and evaluation we're giving. And I actually just did a podcast with another director last week, and we raised the idea of, if you've submitted an assignment, you should be able to have a conversation about it. So I love hearing that assignments are subject to oral assessment. And maybe it's for teachers and educators looking at the fact that the more automated that we become, also the more personal we need to become. Like, we need to dial things back and have a conversation and not just have automated assessments and quizzes. What do you think?
Yeah, there's so much potential for AI to enhance the students' learning, to make creative critical thinkers that may not have had that creativity prior to AI. So we don't want to ignore the cheating and the assessment evaluation. We want to embrace those conversations. But once we've had those conversations, then we want to shift to now look at what you can do with AI and how it can help and differentiate for all of your learners and what it can do for you as an educator. So some people want to just ignore the cheating and that aspect. And I think that's problematic, because that's the starting point for many staff is, how do I make sure that students aren't going to abuse this? We address that, and then we move on to now look at all the potentials that are out there. So it really has the potential to be transformative for K-12.
Absolutely. And when you spoke about privacy, what strategies or what things do you think that leaders of school boards and higher ed should be looking at when we're bringing in AI when it comes to privacy?
Yeah, so for privacy, we have the starting point of anything that as a district we're licensing. So if we license a tool for every staff member, every student, that's actually the easier part, because we're going to do a full privacy impact assessment. We do have a privacy officer in our board, so that person can go through all of those steps. So we know that we've addressed where the data is being stored, who has access to it, what happens if that company sells to another company, etc. So that part is done. The challenge is, how do you do that when there's over 14,000 AI tools? So there's not a chance that a team of 3 or 4 people can do that. So they're just going to take the major applications. So what we've done is we've created a flow chart or an infographic for our staff that if you find a fabulous AI tool for your subject-specific area, we're not saying don't use it. We're saying do that assessment. So we'll give them some steps to follow. That way they know that privacy is important, that they have to make sure that they're not unintentionally releasing data. We also know that many staff will use, whether it's Copilot or Gemini or Claude or any of the other generative AI tools where their students don't have access because of their age, but staff are using it. And if it's not a paid version, we have to be careful with those privacy of what's being uploaded. So we are asking staff to make sure you don't upload any personal information. A very quick example from this year during our pilot. So many principals are asked to write reference letters for their students. The student gives them a copy of the resume. And it's so easy now using one of the generative AI tools to upload that resume and say, write me a 1-page reference letter for this student, and it's done. We don't want that to happen. What we want our staff to do is take out any of the personal information, put in some of the key points from the resume. We use an 80-20 rule. So what comes out, if it's perfect or looks really good, 80% of that you can use as the educator. 20% now you need to go back and personalize it so it's really coming from you. So there's no personal information going into the generative AI, but the key points that will save a lot of time for our principals with any personal data they can do. If they're writing a speech for a graduation ceremony, that's a little bit different. You're not going to mention students' names in your speech. You can put in your school board or your school motto, some key points of what you're thankful for. And generative AI will give you a great job. Again, 80% perhaps. The last 20%, make sure you're personalizing it. So those are some ways we're dealing with privacy. We'll also this June, we're in June, we're almost done, but we are writing to all of our vendors on record, anyone that we, in the technology world that is providing us with services, to ask them to revisit our agreements to show us what their roadmap is for AI, to make sure that if they are using AI, we're aware of how it's going to be used, how it might impact our students. And we're reminding all of our staff of the age limits. So while ChatGPT has decreased their age limit to 13, tools like Gemini are currently at 18. So with the far majority of our students being 17 and under, none of them should be using ChatGPT in a classroom setting. So with parental permission, they could use ChatGPT. So we'll make sure that they're all aware of all of the age limitations. But many tools already in our system, like Canva is a great example. We have kids in grade 2 that use Canva, and it has all kinds of AI magic tools built in right now, which are fabulous. So we'll make sure the parents are aware that they've given their student permission to use these digital tools. And many of the digital tools now include AI functions built in.
Mm-hmm. You've raised several really great points when it comes to AI and privacy, and actually just technology in general in privacy when we're looking at implementing new technology within our education organizations. The paid versus free, that's a huge one. You know, a lot of times when educators, when we're checking out a new tool, we'll do a free trial, which can be awesome to decide if you want to commit to it or not. But we need to understand that if we're not paying the premium for that tool, we are the commodity. Our habits, our use habits, our demographic information, the apps on our phones, the things that we're using whenever something is free. And the moment we go to a paid version, the level of privacy and expectation as a client completely changes. And many of us, I did a video actually last year on the whole, we're so guilty of it. I've done it too, where you're getting a new app on your phone and they have these great, big, huge, long agreements on them. And we all just really want to try out the app. So we hit okay. But, you know, a lot of times it's, again, you are the commodity, you are the product if it's a free version. So now I just, in vain, tell educators, just please assume everything you do on your phones, it's public, you know, it's, that data is going somewhere, it's available, your shopping habits, the things you do. If you're not very immersed in technology, you're not checking out those agreements. And that's especially true with AI. And I also love the idea that you're asking those questions of companies. You know, one of the things I wrote about for leaders who, when it comes to virtual learning and technologies, it can be really intimidating if you don't have the tech journey that you've had, for instance, and you're in a senior leadership position and technology's changed so much during, you know, you've 35 years, so 3 decades for leaders to keep pace with. And if you're not someone who's completely connected to the technology world and you don't necessarily want to be, it can be really, you can feel vulnerable making decisions for your board on these technologies. And often you don't really need to know a lot about tech. You just need to know the questions to ask the vendors you're using in your tech teams. And so you writing to and asking vendors now using AI, how are they using it? Where is your data being stored? Is it here or is it in another country? Like they used to be important questions for virtual learning, but now I think they're essential questions for any new technologies that we're considering licensing, especially when you have a board made up of K-12 and minor students.
That's right. I'll just add two pieces to that as well. That so one of the good news is both Microsoft Copilot and Google Gemini in their free versions for school systems are adding the extra level of safety and data protection. So even if we're using the free versions, we do have that guarantee, which is good. That's not in place yet, but it will be for September. So that's, I think, really important to look at. And I think you covered the other areas, so I'll leave that.
And so you talked about Brisk, that a number you said, I think 1,500 teachers within your board are using Brisk. What's your favorite thing about Brisk? Tell me a little bit more about that, Brisk AI.
Well, from a system perspective, when I look at, for me, one of my key roles, it's not the technology, it's change management. So the change management and change leadership is really important. And we did position our AI year of learning that this was not a technology initiative. Every one of our superintendents, from curriculum to finance to HR to planning, had to be involved in how can AI transform K-12. So I mentioned that as to start the answer to this question, in that with Brisk, because it works seamlessly with our existing interface. So if you're using Google Slides, it's built right into Google Slides. So I can ask it to translate. I can ask it to create a slide deck in Google Slides. I can ask it to create an assessment and put it right into Google Docs. It's just seamless. It saves the educators a ton of time. And we're piloting Boost, which is the student side of Brisk. So for our students, they're not leaving the application to go somewhere else. They're not going to another website or URL. And when we can keep them in their one environment where they're working, they're more likely to use those resources. So it's that seamless integration that we really like about Brisk. And there are other tools that we will be licensing that we're just working out the costs right now before next year. But that would be our number one tool after a year of pilots that people have really enjoyed using. And I would say it's the ease of use and simple integration. So it's not, not another login, not another password, not another site to go. It's just where you're already working.
That's great. And do you have any personally favorite Edtech tools you're using to navigate the organization, the responsibilities? Like if you were to recommend one tool that you love for other directors, what would that be?
Well, right now it is the generative AI tool. So it would be it would be ChatGPT 4.0. And I do have the paid version right now that I'm using, but it allows me to create GPTs. So I've created several GPTs. So an example for our board is deep learning, where we follow Dr. Michael Fullen's work on deep learning. We're part of a global network of 20 countries. So when a teacher right now or an educator wants to learn about deep learning, they have to go to websites. They have to do a fair bit of work. They're reading books, etc., which is great. We provide them with support. But with a GPT, they can go in and say, I'm doing a lesson for grade 3 on fractions. How can I enhance this with critical thinking or the 6 global competencies? And it's going to pull from those resources and put that out. So for me to be able to create that, to contribute, or our staff to do that. I think that's really fabulous. We're a Catholic board, so we're always looking for prayers for different meetings, and it saves a lot of time to say, here's our board's spiritual theme, and can you write me a prayer for grade 2 that's based on year 1 of the theme? And we have staff that have created, they're using Chip as one of their tools right now to create those chatbots. Over the summer, we plan on doing some work, hopefully, most likely with Google, to create a chatbot for our website. So you look at running a district, people go to your website, your school website, your board website, and they're searching. And it doesn't matter who's in charge of the website. It's hard to find things on websites because your search comes up with 20 hits. You've got to read the articles. Now, when you add a chatbot and someone can go in and say, tell me the board policy on whatever topic, and it will give them an answer. Tell me who the principal is. How do I register my child for kindergarten? And now you can enter it in Arabic. You can enter it in Spanish, and you'll get your response in Arabic or Spanish. So I think those are the tools that really excite me right now in my role and for our superintendents. That's very different than the tools our teachers and educators will be using in the classroom. But if you're asking me what I would recommend to my colleagues, it's spend some time playing around with some of these generative AI tools. And it doesn't have to be Google, Microsoft. It's whatever works well with your district.
Excellent. And do you think that we need to be doing anything new to validate, when we're looking at validating and teaching students how to validate and our educators to validate the information coming back from the generative AI to chat tools? Any recommendations or suggestions there?
Yeah, 100%. So we've always taught digital literacy, but now with deep fakes and hallucinations, it's so important that critical thinking is taught at every age, every grade level. So what we have in our board, we have a program called Samaritans on the Digital Road. It's our digital citizenship program. We've been using this since 2010 probably. So we create a series of 5 lessons that up until this year have been taught every single grade level every year over a period of 5 days. So every student every year gets digital literacy in our board. We used to do that through our religion curriculum. Starting next year, we're rewriting all of those units to include AI literacy. So it's still digital literacy, but it will include AI literacy from kindergartens to grade 12. It links extremely well with the Ontario curriculum for language arts for the media literacy unit. So from grades 1 to grade 9, it'll be taught in the first month of school in language arts. For grades 10 to 12, it doesn't correlate perfectly. So we'll continue to teach that through our religion courses. But every student is going to get digital literacy with AI literacy as a focus next year. And that includes critical thinking. We have school improvement plans. Now they're called student action plans in Ontario. Every one of our schools next year will include a global competency of critical thinking in the age of AI. So every school in their school improvement plan will intentionally be teaching, and every educator will be looking at how do we teach critical thinking during knowing that AI will allow anyone to capture a video or audio and reproduce it. So it's not just going out to our students as a code of conduct issue that you could face suspension and expulsion if you make a video of your principal and you put it out with them speaking using generative AI, or the risks we're seeing with pornography with kids putting images. They need to learn why that's wrong, why it's against the law, and we want to teach all of that early in the school year. So that's our plan, and they'll get that every single year, age appropriate, year after year, and that's our way of approaching AI literacy and digital literacy.
I like that idea too, because it becomes essentially part of your code of conduct and your culture for your academic culture for your school board. Moving forward, what for other directors and leaders in education, would you be able to share what was the primary obstacle or the biggest obstacle you encountered this year while you were on your AI journey?
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge is we didn't have the expertise. That was one of the challenges. There are several. So not having the expertise in education, and we have some fabulous people in our learning technologies department, but we did not want to position this as just a technology initiative. So what we needed to do was bring in some experts, and we did. We partnered with a group called Advanced Learning Partnership, ALP, and by connecting with them, it brought us into their network. So they had 23 districts, 21 in the United States that they were already working with. So we were able to tap into that network. So that was a challenge we had early on, but that's how we addressed that challenge, was let's connect with other districts, other companies that can support us in this year of learning. And we've since added many other networks. So that was a key challenge. another challenge with our work this year was we needed to be cautious and careful that people weren't saying, I'm already swamped. This is an extremely hard profession. I can't add anything else. So dealing with that whole area of change initiatives that fail because there's too many change initiatives going on. And our way of dealing with that is focus on coherence. So I mentioned the deep learning framework that we use from Dr. 𝗪𝗁𝘁. So that's our teaching and learning framework. It has 4 key elements and then 6 global competencies. So we positioned AI as fitting within that existing framework. So it's not something new. It's a change in pedagogy, and it's a change how you enhance your learning environments and your learning partnerships, and leveraging technology. But it fits into what we were already doing. So that was really important to not look at this as a brand new initiative, but fitting in within good practices of teaching and learning. And that coherence was really important to our success. So that was a challenge in that we didn't want it to come across as we're abandoning everything we've done. Now we're going to jump onto the AI bandwagon. And that would have led to a lot of resistance.
You've raised a good point on, learning initiatives that fail. And a part of this, after you've joined the organization to become a partner, which is excellent, is how do we funnel this information down to educators and teachers and to the classroom? And one of the great challenges has always been, whether actually it's a school or any organization training employees and staff, it's time, right? So if someone's working full-time already during the day, how do we make room for professional development that's going to be engaging and relevant to what they need and not something that they're doing at 9:00 at night at the end of the day? Have you taken on any initiatives or strategies for professional or providing professional learning for teachers and with all of these changes just to help support them? And if so, can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, we don't have any magic solutions. It's really multiple entry points for all staff that we try and approach. So we have problems with staff shortages. So it's very rare now to pull a large group of educators out of the classroom to come centrally to get some professional learning. But that's not a bad thing because there's so much research that shows that type of professional learning was not great to start with. So wherever possible, we try and make it job embedded where we will go into the classroom. So if we're supporting a student, for example, a student with special needs that's learning a technology, we'll teach the entire class and the educator. We do a lot of sessions centrally where our central staff can do some work on a tool or on a platform, and they'll share it with the student. So we could have 100 classes joining us for a virtual session, and that's how we can get that training done during the day, during the educator's class time. We still also have, we have amazing staff in Ottawa Catholic, so we have lots of people that still volunteer their time. We ran an AI summit this year in May, where educators could share the pilots that they were working on with their colleagues to say what worked, what didn't work, and we want to make sure it's not performative. It's here's what really happened, and here's the pros and the cons. So they would share that with their staff. So they came out on a Saturday. We'll have about 1,000 people this summer taking courses that we run for free. We'll provide them with a lunch to come out for a half day or a day in the last 2 weeks of August. We'll continue to provide in-service, whether it's reading, new ways of reading. It could be numeracy, it could be AI, it could be deep learning, and they do come out on in the summer for that. We're offered to pay for pretty much any staff that wants to take part in TCEA the summer in July. They have a 1-day AI conference with some fabulous sessions. So, we'll send 150 staff to that. So we'll pay for them to attend on their own. It's their time, but we'll do our best to support people. We ran book clubs during the year on AI. And when we ran our book clubs, we invited students as well. So students could come to speak to the staff that are learning about AI to say, well, this might be what you read in your book. Here's my reality. And they could share that. Lunch and learns are very popular, where we'll send our staff to a school. We'll pay for their lunch. And while during lunch, we'll provide some activities, some learning activities for them. So we really have multiple learning points, and we do still do the traditional conferences where we'll support staff to go to a conference and bring back and share their learning. But it's been more of a challenge with the job shortages and unfilled jobs for sure.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like your board is really at the forefront of the curve for technology. It's really impressive, this conversation today. So I have learned so much, and I think everyone listening's learned so much. I have a final wrap-up question for you. So we're doing a fun thing where a previous guest actually leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who they are or what their role is in education. So this wrap-up question came from Jason Singh. He's the director at MEDEX College. And his question was, as an educational leader, we often work with data to measure the progression of our initiatives. However, personal stories can shed light on the true impact on student success and well-being. Can you share a recent experience or story from a student or instructor that highlights the positive effects of one of your initiatives?
I'm a huge fan of small data. So I'm going to start by saying that. So although we have a data warehouse and we do all of the analysis, I'm really in favor of street data. So there's a wonderful book, Street Data, that talks about knowing your students and finding out what's happening at the class level. Pasi Sahlberg as well is a big fan of small data. So the way we get small data is we ask our students the questions. So our focus groups can be going into a classroom and saying to a student, tell me how you're using AI. Are you using it? So that would be street level data directly from a student where they can validate what's happening. We have told all of our principals this year and last year for several years, I want to be able to walk into every one of my schools or our schools and say to any student, any teacher, what global competency are you working on? And if the school has a focus of creativity or critical thinking, and I walk into a grade 2 class and the students can't tell me that that's critical thinking, then it's something that's part of an action plan posted on a wall. It's not getting it to the student's desk. So I hope that answers your question, but I'm a strong believer of student level data focus groups as opposed to large questionnaires going out to 1,000 people and having anonymous data that we don't know who really filled it out, but looking at that and taking an equity lens to everything that we do.
No, that's a really great answer. Having that personal conversation, actually visiting classrooms, going in one-on-one to see for ourselves, tells a very different story than often those large questionnaires and surveys, which I still do once in a while, I'm going to admit. But, it's different kinds of data, different types of feedback. So that's a great answer. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and share your insights and your knowledge and your experiences with us today, Tom. Truly appreciate it. And I'm definitely going to be following your process or your progress at the Ottawa Catholic School Board.
Great, Annette. I really appreciate it. And nice to be in this venue with you, and happy to see people continuing to learn about technology in classrooms and how we can all look at education reform to make things better for our staff and students.
Wonderful.